In an era defined by global GPS tracking and constant satellite surveillance, a 300-ton commercial jetliner shouldn't be able to just vanish. On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 was a routine red-eye, scheduled to fly from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. There were 239 people on board. The conditions were ideal, the weather was clear, and the aircraft itself was technically sound, having passed all its recent safety inspections. The man in charge was Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah. He wasn't just experienced, he was an elite pilot with more than 18,000 hours in the air. For the first 40 minutes, the flight followed its flight plan to the letter. Every parameter, from its altitude to its speed, remained completely standard. This absolute normalcy is what makes the subsequent silence so jarring. For a flight this routine to simply stop existing defies the standard expectations of modern aviation safety. At 1:19 a.m., the cockpit checked in with a final, routine radio transmission. "Good night, Malaysian 370. That was the last time anyone heard from the flight. Minutes later, the plane's transponder was manually deactivated. This system is what tells air traffic control where a plane is. Without it, the aircraft effectively disappeared from civilian radar. Military radar tracked a different story. The intended path was toward China. Instead, the plane performed a sharp westward turn back over the Malaysian peninsula. It maintained this trajectory, flying into the Andaman Sea until moving beyond military sensors. A mechanical emergency, like a fire or decompression, typically results in a pilot flying toward the nearest airport. Investigators found that this specific route required a sequence of precise, manual navigation steps. Because the communication systems were manually severed just before this complex maneuver, the investigation began to focus on the possibility of a calculated diversion. Once the plane left radar range, the trail should have gone cold, but investigators eventually found evidence that the flight hadn't ended in the Andaman Sea. Inmarsat analyzed automated hourly pings between the aircraft and an orbital satellite. These handshakes confirm MH370 remained in the air, flying in total radio silence for 7 hours after that final goodnight. This prolonged flight, combined with the deliberate turn, led to the controversial theory that the disappearance was an act of pilot suicide. In Captain Zahari Yaom, investigators found a flight simulator. Reports suggest it contained deleted flight paths mirroring a route deep into the southern Indian Ocean. While the family disputes the simulator findings, the satellite data remains a fixed point. It confirms that the disappearance was a sequence of events lasting several hours, rather than an immediate impact. By calculating the time delay of those satellite pings, experts narrowed down a search area in the remote southern Indian Ocean, thousands of miles away from any land. Several nations launched a massive search operation, sending ships into some of the most hostile and remote waters on Earth. Search teams deployed autonomous submersibles to map the ocean floor. For months, they scoured the deep-sea trenches, but found no trace of the aircraft. In July 2015, a piece of a wing washed up on the shores of Reunion Island. Serial numbers later confirmed it belonged to MH370. The discovery of this part, and others that followed along the African coast, proved the plane had indeed crashed into the ocean, ending theories that it had landed safely in a secret location. Yet the main body of the aircraft, the 239 victims, and the black box that holds the final answers have never been recovered. Having a timeline and a likely location, yet lacking a final cause, leaves an open wound in the history of aviation safety, and for the families, a